episode 3 was, oh my God.
As a fan, I thought, wow. As a DP, I thought, fuck.
If you take Hardhome and you take Bob and you take The Lake and you add them together, add a 5x4, you have episode 3.
We had 11 weeks of night shooting, so that was quite a feat for any crew to go through.
We knew this episode was going to be almost entirely battle. It's well over an hour, and it's mostly action, and part of what we cared about a lot here was getting Miguel on board and forcing him to shoot 55 straight nights.
Look at it this way, I never ever want to do that again. I don't think anybody who did that ever wants to do it again. Yeah, that was tough, and I don't think it was something that anybody really realized just how hard it was going to be.
The long night. When I was doing it, it was minus 14. Just chilling, minus 14. In a field. You know, it's too cold to snow. When it's too cold to snow, you know you got in trouble.
Chris and the rest of the team, they were there day in, day out, where you would start your evening at 6 o'clock at night, and then you'd go home at, 5 o'clock in the morning, and it just, that's brutal. Your body never acclimates to that 100%.
By like week 3, say, like people looked slightly haunted. Cast, stunts, background, crew, like everybody just looked like this is like getting into us. This is like getting into our spirits.
I'm not gonna lie, it was horrible. We enjoyed the work, and I said to my guys, you might not want to do it again, but you won't regret doing it the first time. Because the product, what you've achieved, is amazing.
I think the crew, they enjoyed the result is, you didn't do all this and think that's not really impressive. There's no doubt about it, it's really an impressive sequence. And I think the nights are just one of the things, we're just going to get through this. It's just another notch in the belt of the crew on Game of Thrones, that they've done things that feel quite unique.
I'm proud of everyone. I'm proud of the work that was put in. I think it was a mammoth task that we were faced with, and we did it. And it just feels incredible. That first week after night shoot, seeing the crew, like, smiling at the sun.
What they went through was pretty stunning. And look, it's not, there's no special prize for being toughest crew, but there probably should be.
Working in the pitch dark, in the rain, in the mud, it's a real testament to the entire Belfast crew who gave us something that no amount of money could ever buy.
The task that we had, which was the primary task on 3, is how do we keep this interesting? Because simply battle fatigue, you just get bored, you get exhausted.
We really wanted to make sure we were telling a coherent story with the whole thing and not just having battle beat, battle beat, battle beat. There needs to be a shape to it and a propulsion to it.
It became clear when we started planning it that the battle was going to be a series of concentric circles. It would be walls of defenses failing, and the dead getting closer and closer to the center and to the heart of Winterfell and taking over everything.
The way that I concepted episode 3 visually was to create a color scheme that developed through the whole episode. So it starts with a moonlit night. Because the Night King brings the storm and the clouds, the moon becomes dissipated and the moonlight takes over, but in a very diffused kind of way. And then the next stage would be the trench going up. We wanted the trench to be this overpowering light. And in prep for a long time, Miguel always mentioned hell to me. It's turning into hell for each character. So the blood red fire of the trench takes over the image and completely drains out the blue of the moon until the end. Because the trench is dying down, the moonlight suddenly gets introduced again. So that was kind of the way for me to break it up into sections.
So you have something that's visually different, so it's refreshing in that respect. But how do we take it one step further? And so what we decided was to give each act a genre. So basically, Act 1 is suspense and is build up. And the best way to do build-up is in any sort of kind of monster movie, which is what this is to not see the monster. Act 2 is actually from the moment that Arya is on the back foot and enters into the castle, that's the horror movie. And then Act 3 is an action movie. And so by breaking it into genres, it allowed us to change rhythm and go off on tangents where we followed specific characters for a longer period of time rather than worried about what was happening to everyone else.
The core of it is the people you care about. You want to care about the people fighting, so every effort is made to make sure that you center that conflicts around the people you know.
And so whether it's Arya's storyline or Sansa and Tyrion down the crypt or Jon Snow and Dany up in the dragons, it's kind of like all these separate little battles within the greater battle.
Light the torch! Light the torch!
Ah, fuck. Sorry, I'm really sorry.
The living do have some time to prepare for this battle, and one of the things they know going into it is that they're going to be outnumbered, and another thing they know is that the Whites don't like fire. So they dig a massive trench around the entire castle and fill it with kindling.
To read the word trench on the page doesn't sound like anything, but it took such a lot of work to try and resolve it to a point that it was a convincing method of defence. It was important that this trench not be something that anybody could jump over, so we needed to construct these bridges that would then collapse and create another barrier.
The trench had real wooden spikes, real wooden logs lining throughout the trench. Then the real logs were replaced by steel logs that could burn over a number of weeks without burning away. It had to accommodate a whole special effects rig. So the considerations are enormous. And in the end, the trench sort of encompasses pretty much the whole of the castle. As trenches go, it was a good trench. And I've done some trenches.
Light the trenches!
And then the reality of how do you light a 900-foot-long thing full of bitumen with hundreds of people running at it and stunt people in it. Oh, I mean...
So...
The complicated process of the trenches began with the concept of it being a first line of defence. Therefore, it had to be impressive, it had to be very big. So we had to devise a way we could produce a flame which is big enough for outside environment. So we came up with a system which is just a simple water trough. It makes the most economical flame out of propane. And then, of course, you've got to think about the consumable part of it. You can't have real logs in there. It has to be a steel thing. It has to be able to endure the heat and the fire. I think we did 900 steel logs and we did 16 steel troughs. And then you have to work out how you get that amount of gas to each trough. We've got one 4-ton tanker with a mobile unit, which is 5-ton. So with a combination of two, we convert liquid into gas, and that's what gives us our gas supply. We run it off an electronic valve system that's tied in with a firing box, and each one's ignited by an individual gas bang in a sequence. It uses a lot of gas, a lot of gas.
Have you got your gas bill?
I've got my gas bill, yeah. I'm dreading that one.
And you see the Red Priestess come out and light that trench, that would be such an extraordinary moment as it just lights around Winterfell. In terms of imagery, I always thought that was such a fantastic thing. So you really were seeing for the first time the ice and the fire meeting. So that was something that I thought was a really lovely image to establish.
I got a call from Miguel like a year before we started shooting. Basically, he was like, I can't tell you anything, but get your endurance up now. I want you to be training. You have a lot to do. It's going to be night shoots. We're going to do 3 months of night shoots. And I was just like, okay. Like, I think I was, like, in Boston at the time, like, eating, like, cheese fries. Like, cool. Her entire fight through the battlements was just a real great moment, and everything that I have learned really did come down to that, and I did use every sort of skill that I'd learned in that fight.
It's one thing to go on the battlements, but then over the top of Winterfell, you've got these 2 staircases that go up to the middle section of Castellation. So we thought it'd be really claustrophobic and dark and scary to be in there with whites, but that's when the full staff doesn't really work.
We all know these tunnels are very small, and the last thing you want is a 5.5 or a 6 foot quarterstaff going through small little alleyways. So what I decided to do in this one, be able to cut it in half, so be able to disassemble within the fight sequence, and then have 2 of them she could use both in each hand, which was great, and it gave also then the stunts something else to play with and to train with.
Yeah, because if I concentrate on doing the move, one of them does it and then the other one doesn't, and it's like...
One of the incredible things about Maisie is that she's a righty. Because Arya in the books is left-handed, she decided she was going to learn how to fight left-handed. So in season 1, when she's training with Syrio Forel, she's training with her left hand, and which is incredibly challenging. But what it did mean was that she's learned how to fight left-handed, and she's naturally right-handed, so she's become an ambidextrous fighter. And Maisie does almost all this stuff on her own. She has an excellent stunt woman for the dangerous stuff, but most of it's actually Maisie.
Her coordination, and she's really quick, you know, can make changes on the spot. She's really easy to work with.
It's one thing practicing a fight, which is like a sparring fight, you know? But then when you're actually fighting for your life with loads of stuntmen who like do this day to day and are not scared of anything, and they're covered in this crazy makeup and they're coming at you like, rah! It's just a completely different ball game. And I think I probably hold the record for the most apologies on set. Fucking hell, I'm so sorry. Sorry, guys.
They're fine. They got pads on.
We knew any situation where lots of people are fighting, Arya needs to play a central role because she's one of the best at it. That's amazing, and it's a lot of fun to watch, but it's one note, and to try to play that note through the whole episode, it wouldn't have worked. So having her wounded and having her almost taken out of commission and almost rewinding the clock on who Arya Stark is would really be interesting. It would also give us a chance to change up the nature of the story we were telling.
The library sequence was built around the idea of I need to have a marked shift where the audience, instead of coming back and going, okay, and more battle, they come back and they go, oh, change the style. Hopefully what it does is it refreshes the audience, and they're like, you know, we want to know what's going on outside, but we're okay to be inside for a minute and slow things down. And we're also okay to be with Arya, who's suddenly, from being this incredibly confident character that she's been now for quite some time, is completely traumatized by what's happened to her. One of the things we did when we shot that sequence is we designed the library in a certain way, and then I took Maisie in there and I got 9 whites or something in there, and I gave them all a path, and then I told her she had to make her way through it without being seen. And we figured out this whole choreographed piece where everything was a near miss, and everything was just about not seeing, and everything had to be silent. And it was really fun to do.
Oh my God, you're so scary.
So the hero Whites in the library, Miguel, he was after somebody who could get themselves into quite an interesting position, but have a physique which would be a little bit unworldly, which would suggest they're dead, basically. I knew of this performer, Spanish performer, called Javier Botet, and he's double, triple jointed. He can do the most ridiculous things with his body, and he's been covered in prosthetics pretty much all his career, so I knew he was the guy that could
pretty much sell it for us. From a prosthetics point of view, he's got a couple of little bits and pieces. He's got some little cheekbone appliances. We've got a few little scrapes and wounds, and then we just did this sort of airbrushed body painting on him as well, and just really accentuated all his sort of shadows and all his muscles and his bone structure, and his movement just sold it for us.
We're all in love with Lyanna Mormont. I think the whole world is. So we wanted this to be her absolute heroic moment.
Oh, when I found out I was dying, it was the best thing, really. It sounds strange, but I either decided I'd be happy if I ended up on the throne, which I thought was very, very unlikely, or I had a great death. So I'm very happy. And the whole giant thing, that's just really cool.
All the shots with Lyanna and Crumb were all really pretty complicated, and they all had lots of pieces to them. So it started out at Tomb, where we shot the Winterfell set, and we shot a lot of the backgrounds for the shots. And where we wanted to frame for Giant, we used this technology called InCam, and this allowed us to play back sort of an animation of what the Giant's performance would be that was synced to the camera.
And so that when Sean Savage, who's the A camera operator, is operating on the day, he can actually see the giant at his proper scale in the set. So they were able to operate it as if it was a real thing. Yeah, that's better, boys. Just leave that out.
The giant is real. He could be 3D, but we prefer to shoot real, organic, live photograph people wherever we can.
Our giant performer, Ian White, who's 7'5", I believe, he performed all the actions of the giant in front of green screen, but we shot him in a way to double his scale. For the shots where he had to pick up Lyanna, we put tracking markers on a green doll that he picked up, and we motion captured that and would use it to drive a robotic arm, basically, to pick up our actress, Bella. And that would move her around as if she was being held by Crumb. You know, for some of those shots, there's at least 4 or 5 different elements that we've photographed at different times that will all go into making that final shot.
Really, it's just bringing the lowest techs, miniature props approach, and the very highest tech, digital scaling and digital handoffs.
I think it's very fitting for Lyanna to die, like doing something like that, stabbing a giant in the eye. It's a bit like, I realised today, it's a bit like David and Goliath, the same sort of thing. Like just a stab in the eye kills him. But with this little Lyanna moment.
Down in the crypt becomes just a complete horror movie. It's terrifying down there. We're in a crypt. Nobody thought of that. He's bringing all the dead people back to life, and they put the women and children in a crypt with all the dead people. So, rah. Tyrion is smart, but I guess not that smart.
Yeah, the whole action was really fun, because I never get to do any action. In between setups, Peter and I would be joking around like guns, like running between podium to podium, trying to catch a white. We felt like action stars, even though we probably ran like 5 meters.
With the whites in the crypt, for us that was exciting because we realised we were going to do some really cool mummified and dried husky sort of whites. We referenced ancient mummies, we looked at corpses, and there are some tombs which have got these figures which are exactly the inspiration we were looking for, and they're these dried, wizened bodies which still have dried, encrusted skin all over them. They still have hair, and they're hundreds and hundreds of years old. They have their teeth, really, really dusty, and completely different to what we'd seen before.
There was one point where I had to run through a crowd of people. and whites were coming out, and one came up to me and I actually started crying. I was so scared. Like, whenever I get scared, I just cry, and it was so awful. Those whites are horrible, just as scary in real life. I hate them.
They're around dark corners, and you're like, you don't fully know where they're all coming from. I mean, everything's safe and mapped out, but it's still, you get into it, and you're just going by candlelight. We don't have any other lighting sources down there, really. It's creepy. It was fun. A week underground with dead people.
We're such nice people that, you know, it's just such violence that we're portraying.